Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today we are going to decode the $400 billion export record that Government of India has announced that India has made this year. We are going to understand the different components and different dimensions of this figure and what is the challenges that Indian economy have to face, especially as far as the exports are concerned in the upcoming years. So first of all, the context in which we are discussing today's issue is because few days back the government of India has said that for the first time in the history of India, the total value of all the goods that is exported by India in this particular financial year has made a record high of $400 billion. Before it was the highest record was in year 2019 when India exported a total value of $330 billion in terms of goods. One thing that we have to keep in mind here, that this total value only includes the value of goods that is exported, does not include the value of services that India exports to different countries. And it is in this context that both Prime Minister of India Sri Narendra Modi and the Union Commerce Minister of India Sri Piyush Goyal have congratulated all the exporters for achieving this historic feat. However, before we start celebrating about this particular figure, let us try to understand about this figure in slight more details. And also, what are the major key takeaway point we can understand from this particular figure. So this is the graph that shows the growth in the terms of total value of goods exported. You can see this is the $400 billion, and this is just for this we talk about 2 weeks before. That means the financial year will end after 2 weeks. That means it is expected that by the end of this particular year, the total value of goods exported will reach somewhere about $410 billion. So this we can see is in 1970-1971 we have very less amount of goods that is being exported, obviously because India was more of a kind of closed economy, and we can see there is sudden rise, the kind of exponential rise we can say that has happened in the exports of India, especially after the LPG revolution, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms that were introduced by the government under the Prime Ministership of P.V. Narasimha Rao and the Finance Ministership of Dr. Manmohan Singh. And from since then we can see there has been continuous rise, except these 2 years where we see or where we have seen the significant dip in the value of goods exported. Otherwise the overall graph is continuously rising. So let us try to understand some important or major takeaways. The first takeaway is that however the value of goods exported has made a record high of $400 billion, if we try to understand the exports in terms of percentage of GDP, it is relatively lower as compared to the earlier years. And this we can again see from this particular graph that shows the exports as percentage of GDP. And for this particular we can see the highest figure is somewhere in the year of 1415 when the total percentage of goods that is exported were somewhere about 17% of GDP. As compared to that, since then it has continuously declined, and even now if we talk about definitely in terms of value, the absolute value in terms of the monetary value, the goods exported has increased, but in terms of percentage it is still on decline, roughly somewhere about 12 to 13% of GDP. That means still from 17% that was the highest figure, here we still are on the lower side. The total value of goods that was exported when the highest percentage was recorded was in year 2011-12 when the value of goods were $305 billion, percentage was 17%. And since 2011-12 we can see a continuous, the graph has either become stagnant or is in the phase of decline. So in terms of percentage of GDP, exports we can say are still relatively weaker in nature. The second point is also something that we can refer as a low base effect. Low base effect we can understand from the perspective of the financial crisis that the whole global economy had to face last year, mainly due to the COVID pandemic. And what we can see from here that since 2011-12 where we discussed the annual growth rate of India's good export have declined, but it started to improve in 17-18. Again it slumped down in 2021 due to COVID scenarios, and from there again we have the significant increase in the growth rate. So if we try to compare the change in the growth rate from the last year, it looks very significant in number, but if we compare in last one decade, then still we are lagging behind. And this we can understand from this particular figure that India's goods export have contracted by 7% and 5% in the last 2 years. Further, so it is in this reference we can try to understand that if you look at the value of growth of India's goods compared to last year, it looks very stellar number, that is 49% growth in current year. However, this growth we have to see in this context that there was already contraction of 7% and 5%, and from the value of 40% in 2011-12, we are still at the level of recovery. We have not made some very significant progress, but we are just recovering in last one decade. The third key takeaway point is, though the number or monetary value of goods exported has increased, also on the year-on-year basis we have seen significant increase in the average, significant increase in the percentage of goods exported. However, this is not a broad-based recovery, and this we can understand from this particular table. That means overall there are 20 categories of goods are there that is exported by India. Out of this 20 category of good, the red ones, that is only 6 category of goods are there which have made a significant improvement in terms of percentage of exports. Out of this, the abysmal performance still we can see in the two major sectors, that is chemicals and related products, that contribute around, we can say, 14% in the total share of goods exported to the outside India. However, the growth is only 17%, that is much below the average growth of 49%. Similarly, agriculture sector has only shown a growth rate of 20%, that is almost half of the average growth rate of the overall goods sector. So it is in this context we can understand that only few sectors are there that are witnessing higher rate of growth. Remaining 14 sectors, actually it is 6 sectors only that is showing very high growth rate, but other 14 sectors still are showing very low growth rate, and that is something that government of India need to be concerned about. The next point we have to understand that what can be attributed as the major reasons of growth behind this achievement of $400 billion magical figure. So the value of the total value or monetary value of the exported goods can increase due to 3 factors. The first factor is the value can increase if there are increase in the price of exported goods. That means if last year you were exporting 100 liters of crude oil and the price was $1 per barrel, that means you are getting $100 as export value. This year it might be possible that you only are exporting 100 barrels of oil, but this year the oil prices are 2 barrels, that means the total value of exported goods will come somewhere about $200. So the value of goods is increasing not because of increase in the volume of exported material, but in the value of the exported material. So that is one possibility. Second, obviously possibility can be that India might have seen increase in the volume of exported goods. That means same example we can understand that last year you might be exporting 100 barrel of oil at price of $1. This year you might be exporting 200 barrel of oil at the price of $1. So in again here in last year you will get $100 and this particular year you will get $200. So here the exported value has increased because of the increase in the volume of exported goods. And third, obviously possibility can be that both the price of exported goods might have risen as well as the volume of the exported goods might have risen. However, Government of India is silent and has not explained in details that what are the reasons behind the growth, whether it is price increase, whether it is volume increase, or whether it is the increase in both. However, what we can see, one pattern that has emerged is that the increase in the volume of petroleum and petroleum related products, they constitute about 15% of total exports, and they have witnessed a growth of almost whopping 158% on year basis. And this also has happened at the time when the global oil prices are rising. So we can understand that petroleum sector has contributed significantly in terms of monetary number in increasing the value of goods exported by India. Let us try to understand that what is the possible explanation behind this rise in the goods exported. So one explanation that is given by the statement of Government of India, they have clearly said that increase in the export volume and value is because of a detailed strategy that Government of India has made on the ministry wise level, and for that they have targeted specific countries across the world, and these specific countries also have been targeted for specific exports depending on the demand of that particular commodity, that particular goods in the particular region. The second statement also government has said that earlier our goods export, we can say export methodologies or export policies were slightly different than required, and the government has taken necessary course correction to align the demand supply at the global level with the export policies of India. The experts suggest some other possibilities. First is that there has been significant surge in global demand, especially after a year-wise dip that was observed due to the COVID pandemic that might have increased the demand of Indian products as well. Second, there's also, we have witnessed a very sharp recovery in the developed economies that have increased the value, we can say monetary or money circulation in the developed economies that could also have driven the demand from Indian goods. And third is the loose monetary policy that has generally been adopted by the central banks of the developed economies, especially like US, UK, European Union and Japan, and it is due to these loose monetary policies there was large scale or wide scale credit availability in the market and among consumers that could also have driven the export demand and import demand from India, increasing the export of India's total value of goods. So obviously, with regard to the possibilities that can explain the growth, export growth of India, there are certain challenges that lie ahead. The first challenge is, if we look at the data or the table that is provided by the Fitch Ratings, World Bank and Haver Analytics, what they expect, this is the figure that represents the expected GDP growth of different economies, and this is actually the GDP growth of the global, at the global level or at the world level. So what we can see here, the expectation of World Bank is that as compared to this particular year, we will witness a slump in the growth of GDP of different countries. This becomes much more important if we try to add the recent scenario the world is witnessing, that is the Russia-Ukraine war, that will also to some extent dip the demand in the European Union, Japan and the US, UK, Canada region because of the sanctions effect. So obviously we will witness a slump in the global growth rate. The second challenge is, again with this reference to the same, that is 2022 Annual GDP Forecast as done by the same organization. We can see all the major economies, for example we have Germany, Italy, other Eurozone and other developed countries will witness a downfall or decrease in the GDP forecast. The second important point is the CPI Inflation Forecast for 2022. Not only it is expected that the global growth rate and the growth rate of the developed economies will go down, at the same time it is expected that the inflation rate will also be higher than believed before. For example, the forecast done in December 21, in case of European countries like Poland, it expected the inflation to be somewhere about 6%, but the most recent forecast has projected the inflation to become somewhere as high as 10%. This is true for almost all the countries across the world. The expected inflation will be lower as compared to the expected inflation as per the last estimate will be lower as compared to the expected inflation as per the current forecast. So what this means for the export of India? Two things are there. First, as we witness that we will witness a lower growth at the global level, and this will be combined with a high inflation rate. So this will produce something that we call as a pincer effect. The combined effect of lower growth rate and high inflation rate will cause reduction in the purchasing power of the people across all the countries of the world. And obviously what will happen if the purchasing power of the people across the world are decreasing? Obviously the demand of the goods all across the world, and especially in terms of India, there will be significant decline, and that is expected to decrease or bring a dip into the total value or volume of goods exported by India. So that is something we have to be very careful about in the future, and we have to recalibrate our export policies keeping the recent realities in mind. So that is all about, as far as decoding the export figure and what is the future, what the future holds for India in general as far as the export growth is concerned. I hope you liked this video and understood about this point in detail. We'll come again soon with other interesting topic. Till then, take care. Thank you very much.